Hey there friends, before I get into my video tonight, I'd like to extend condolences and definitely thoughts and prayers to our friends in Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, even as far away as Virginia, for what's happened to them and their families, whether it be displacement or catastrophic damage in their areas or losing the life of some people as a result of Hurricane Helene. You guys have seen the destruction, and it's everywhere. These people, literally their communities have disappeared in some cases, been flushed down hills, mountainsides from mudslides and the rushing water, the likes that no one in their lifetime has ever seen. One of our viewers, Chris Matthews in the South Carolina area, is also out of power and experiencing, the same issues in his area. So thoughts go out to you, Chris. Hope you and your family are okay. Hope your place is okay. It was good to hear from you earlier today. We see this all the time whenever there's some kind of an issue like this, where it's either a natural disaster or some kind of way for people to experience the drunkenness of power. And sometimes it's perceived power. We saw it during COVID, where people assume power because other people let them assume power. Nobody pushed back. We saw this during hurricanes. We saw this during Hurricane Katrina, where they tried to disarm the people of New Orleans. I live on the west side of Louisiana. So we were impacted by Katrina because they flushed all their bad people out of New Orleans, and we got a lot of them. And of course, as luck would have it, a few weeks later, we got Hurricane Rita, which was actually a worse hurricane than Katrina. And it luckily flushed all those bad actors out of here. But what happens is you have local authorities who seem to get a little bit cocky, and they see that no one is there to push back and to take that power that they're trying to assume on their own. Well, guess what? This also happened in Okeechobee. I like to call it Chokedonkee, Florida. These people experienced some pretty rough stuff down there in the whole state, more up towards the panhandle of Florida. Obviously got hit a whole lot worse down where Chokedonkee is. It's not near as bad. But the police chief took it upon himself to decide that he was the tyrant. John Crump ran a story in Ammo Land about this story. Florida City issues gun ban because of Hurricane Helene. Florida was hit by a massive hurricane a couple days ago. The city of Okeechobee took advantage of the storm by prohibiting carrying, selling, or displaying firearms and ammunition during its state of emergency. The city declared a local state of emergency when Helene approached the Florida shore. The chief of police, Donald C. Hagan II, warned residents that the city was banning the carrying of firearms, whether the guns were carried concealed or openly. He also prohibited the sale of firearms and ammunition to anyone, no matter if it was a private sale or from a gun store. Stores were also not allowed to, get this, display firearms or ammunition. I guess they were told to take them down off the shelves and hide them. The state of emergency ran from 9 a.m. on September 26th through 6 a.m. on September 27th. Although the state of emergency is over, the order is alarming to many gun rights activists. The public notice read, under the authority of City Ordinance 1297, adopted by the City Council, blah, 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 blah. Chief of Police hereby declare a local state of emergency within the municipal boundaries of the city of Chokedonkee. Down below he says, said declaration prohibits the following acts for the duration of the declared state of emergency: the sale of or offer to sell, with or without consideration, any ammunition or gun or other firearm by any size or description; the intentional display by or in any store or shop of any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description; the intentional possession in a public place of a firearm by any person, except a duly authorized law enforcement officer or, official or person in military service acting in the official performance of their duty. Well, that's unconstitutional. Apparently, police chief, I'm assuming he took an oath and he didn't read it, because he's not very good with the laws. This is not a law that he can actually implement. John Crump goes on to state that Florida has preemption, meaning that local law cannot overrule state law. It appears that Okeechobee might have violated the law by banning firearms. A state of emergency doesn't override the Florida state law or the Constitution. So this police chief was just running his gums. Clearly he has no authority to do any of this. Hopefully nobody listened to him. by the way, I'm not an attorney, so don't take your legal advice from me, but I hope no one in Chokodonki actually listened to the police chief, because he's wrong. And had he arrested you for carrying a firearm, which if you're concealing it, how's he going to know anyway unless he illegally stops and frisks you? But if you're carrying one, what's he going to do? You can sue them. So if you were wronged by this police chief or anybody in the police force, please reach out to an attorney. Please reach out to Gun Owners of America. They will likely help you in this, because I'm sure that we haven't heard the last from GOA on this particular instance. Why does this matter? Because no one has heard anything about it. It doesn't seem like anybody was wronged as a result of this. It's wrong because Florida, this ain't their last hurricane. And if this guy gets away with this, he's going to do it the next time. And so will the next town over, their little police chief who gets this little sip of power all of a sudden, or the mayor of an adjoining community, or even a sheriff for that matter. Then it spreads to other states. It's a cancer. When these people get drunk on power and they get tyrannical little things like this that they're able to push through and no one pushes back, it spreads. It spreads to the next community over, because people get into these positions because their egos need to be fed. And when they feed their egos during a time like this, it becomes a power play to them. And when nobody pushes back, they get a taste of that and they like it. They really like that. So if no one pushes back on this police chief, he's going to do this next time. And so will other people just like him that are trying to feed their own egos for these little small town little positions like this. Now, before my detractors start to say that, oh, the police chief at Chokodonki wasn't going to do anything, he was just trying to let people know that he meant business. It didn't apply to pretty much anybody else. The average everyday homeowner or gun owner wasn't going to be dealt with in a negative way. Really? That type of authority has been abused before, as I stated before, during Hurricane Katrina. Check this out.
Good evening from New Orleans. Here, the police and the National Guard find themselves in a very difficult position tonight to try to carry out an order to force people from the city without actually using force.
Today in New Orleans, they got a lot tougher on the holdouts.
Police department, everyone home!
Not only the flooded areas, but New Orleans' driest and wealthiest neighborhoods, too.
Police department!
The police and National Guard going street by street, house to house.
We need to make sure, too, that whenever we knock on doors, people refuse to leave. We need to make note, call it in.
They say there are no orders to use force, just strong persuasion, sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn, and instructions to disarm anyone inside.
You said guns will be taken?
No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
That happened today in this wealthy neighborhood where homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
For many of the police and guard troops, it is an uncomfortable job to do this in an American city. This guard unit occupied a church, using it as a base camp. They had to leave a note because they could not get hold of the pastor to get permission.
It is surreal. Yeah, you never expect to do this in your own country.
Chris Montgomery says he'd rather be in Iraq than patrolling American neighborhoods.
Walking up and down these streets, you don't want to think about the stuff that you're gonna have to do. Somebody pops around the corner.
I mean, shoot in America.
Yeah.
Now, let's be honest. The average everyday gun owner in America is certainly better trained than any of these other guys. So these guys worrying about having to take the lives or shoot at an American, it probably wouldn't fare very well for the National Guard. I'm just being frank here, guys. I'm not trying to start anything, but I mean, you and I, we go to the gun range. We see the guys who are getting their training at the gun range, and we've seen the training of some of these guys with the National Guard. Now, I'm not wanting there to be a fight right there, but the point being is that you have to send the message to these local politicians that they can't get away with what they tried to do for Hurricane Katrina, so that the National Guard are never deployed against the American people. That's not the purpose. That's not the intent. It's meant to keep people safe, not to harass them and disarm them and make them more susceptible to the criminal element out there who, guess what? They ain't listening to you. How about another reason why the police chief for Chokodonki is an idiot? 8 jailed for alleged looting in flood zone. This is Jonesboro, Tennessee. 8 men were arrested for looting Saturday in flood-ravaged sections of Washington County and faced initial court hearings Monday. A news release states 5 men were charged with aggravated burglary for breaking into occupied structures and 3 were charged with burglary. Now, before I show you the picture of the 8 who were locked up for doing this, you should know that I didn't take these pictures. I'm simply copying them and showing you who these looters and pieces of scum were. So if you're worried about race, just remember, we got the little open border issue down there that nobody seems to be concerned with. The biggest shock to me is that this happened in Tennessee, which is kind of considered the South. I'm in Louisiana, so I'm not sure about that. But Tennessee is the South. Notice how all 8 of these guys look to be breathing. They all look to be alive. There's not a single hole in one of these guys other than what they were born with. That is a shocker to me. Now, nobody wants to talk about the status of these fine individuals, but I can assure you they definitely have the appearance of people transplanted from the southern border. So if you're asking yourself, why does somebody need a firearm or to be armed in the aftermath of a natural disaster? Well, first of all, it's nobody's business why somebody wants or feels the need to be armed, right? That's none of your business. You don't need to know, and it doesn't need to be a need. It can be a want. The Constitution recognizes that right. So you don't get to decide if what I need or what I think I want is necessary or not. The Constitution recognizes my right to already do that. And as long as people like this exist out there and they don't see that families are suffering and they see that this is an opportunity for them to take advantage of, to take from families who need every single thing they have right now. Let's remember, these people are already running short on food and water right now, not to mention the fuel to power these homes for these families. But the food and the water are things that people are literally in panic mode right now because people cannot get in and out of these areas. And these idiots think that it's acceptable to steal from these people just because. My guess is you ain't going to hear about too many of these other instances in any of these southern states and most states in general. Whenever there's a natural disaster like this and these fools think it's acceptable to all of a sudden go into somebody else's house and take their things from them. These 8 guys have no idea how lucky they are. Whatever God they may or may not pray to, they should be thanking that deity with every ounce of their foreign blood right now. And before I go, this just in, I just spoke to Luis Valdez, who is the state director for the state of Florida for Gun Owners of America. He gave me a call and he sent me this letter that just got put out by the city of Okeechobee. It's for immediate release, dated today. It goes on to talk about how the hurricane landed and where it landed and all that kind of stuff. And go down to the second paragraph and you'll see where he addresses the ordinance that we just talked about. The emergency ordinance commenced immediately upon the declaration by police chief and was thereafter terminated by the police chief on or about 9:51 p.m. on the same date it was issued. The emergency ordinance was terminated for 2 primary reasons. One is that, fortunately, Hurricane Helene did not have a substantial impact on the city and its residents. Here we go. Secondly, a provision prohibiting the sale of firearms and ammunition was inadvertently included in the emergency ordinance. Upon discovering this, the city and police chief acted expeditiously to terminate the emergency ordinance. Safeguarding the life and property of its residents is the paramount role and responsibility of the city, nothing more, nothing less. At no time did the city or the police chief contemplate nor take any action to prohibit, confiscate, or otherwise regulate firearms or ammunition. I have one problem with this. He listed 3 bullet points in the ordinance. One of the main ones being, letter C, the intentional possession in a public place of a firearm by any person except a duly authorized law enforcement official or person in the military service. You notice his little retraction of stupidity, realizing how he screwed up, does not include that. What he's doing is he's essentially apologizing with this new little letter that he put out, saying that we should not have tried to prohibit the display or sale of firearms, and never mentions the fact that he was trying to disarm other people. That's what I want to hear him address. Not that I'm okay with him prohibiting the sale of firearms. Most people are already going to have their firearms whenever a natural disaster is taking place. They're not shopping, but they're wanting to protect their stuff, just like the people in Tennessee want to protect their stuff from the likes of these 8 winners that went up there to try to loot the place. I want to hear what he has to say about trying to disarm honest, law-abiding Americans. Luis did say he was heading, as I was speaking to him a moment ago, heading down to Okeechobee for their city council meeting, and he is going to bring these issues up to them. I cannot wait to report what he says back to you guys. Thanks, Luis, for bringing this to my attention and give me a call and give me a heads up on this second letter, and good luck with your meeting with the city council in Chokodonki.
I don't understand the point that you're making.
God save the Queen, man.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. He's so